enough of that. Oh, anyway, um, so, I really do start every video that way, don't I? Something that's been kind of propelled into the national dialogue recently is the question whether or not, with women being actively placed into combat theater on kind of a regular basis now, and with them, they're now admitted into special forces units, the SEALs, the Rangers. Should we be requiring women to register for the selective service now? And I think no, but I'll get to that in a minute. I think we need to examine a little more question of that. What is the purpose of the selective service? The draft, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not talking about the people that protect the president. I'm talking about the draft. So if there's another Vietnam, Korea, World War I, World War II situation that requires major on-the-ground infantry engagement with whomever the enemy happens to be, they would institute a draft. And so it's usually kind of stratified so that if you are a single male, 18 years or older, who is not married and not going to college with no children, then you would be required to enter immediately. You don't have any, if you don't have any medical disabilities as well. The thing is, I think that, I don't know how often it gets reviewed, but with the way that kind of anxiety, depression, mental illness have been normalized, or at least kind of the national consciousness of them, where people will just say, I have OCD, or I have crippling depression, I have whatever it is. It's kind of just all over the internet, where I doubt if there's a single person that has a YouTube, a Facebook, or a Twitter account that hasn't at least shared a meme or outright said that they have some manner of anxiety, depression, or whatever like that. And so I don't know how rigorous like the psychological exams for people that would be coming in a draft situation would be, as far as examining them for actual mental illness factors. Because if someone's already got an open wound, essentially, you don't want to put them in a situation where they're going to start getting lots and lots of dirt and bacteria into that wound, right? And so from a mental illness standpoint, someone's already got a vulnerability towards a psychotic break, a post-traumatic stress, or manic depressive or bipolar disorder, something like, if they're already kind of predisposed to moving in that direction, then what is an active combat situation going to do to them? And are we going to have a lot of what they used, like, are we going to have to deal with a lot more of those kind of PTSD symptoms when they come back, those potentially dangerous, potentially violent, potentially addictive behaviors that follow that? And then if we are actually in a draft situation as well, is can we afford even to worry about that? Because if we've got, let's say, open war on the ground with, I don't know, if we want to say like a Fortress America type situation, if you don't know what that is, it's a classic kind of like a miniatures like board strategy game, or Fortress Europe kind of thing, where Risk, like if it's that kind of a situation, can we afford to worry? Like, is that just something that they put on the back burner to deal with later because of the fact that it's such an urgent need? Who knows? Like, it's hard to even imagine a world like that because it's been so long. We're talking about going all the way back to the 70s, which would be nearly 50 years ago, before we're even like in a which or talking about close to 80, like 60, 70 years ago with World War II. Like, that's a long time. War as its own kind of animal, like, it's completely different. The way that it's composed, the way that people fight, the way that strategies are composed, um, like, it's entirely different. Technology has reshaped a lot of what we think about combat, a lot of the way that it manifests itself. So who knows? Quite frankly, if there is to be another World War II, another Vietnam situation, like, what would that actually look like? And then again, is that a situation where you want to have every available body? In which case, maybe maybe women do need to be involved. Russia, very famously during World War II, was in that situation where um, just all the men were dead. I mean, you're talking about 600,000 Russian POWs being left to die by the Wehrmacht, or the Wehrmacht, I guess I should say, like, or I think it was like 2.5 million just for Stalingrad itself, that were lost on. So it's something that is, if, but are we in that kind of a world, I guess, where that's a likelihood? I don't know, because prior to World War One, or prior to World War II, supposedly we had peace in our time. Like, so it's hard to imagine the kind of circumstances that would lead up to that. But from a philosophical standpoint, we're talking about, should I think, is it like, obviously with women already engaged, or kind of being involved in ground combat in active theaters already, I don't think the question is, can women participate in combat? I don't think the question is, can women function in the roles that are necessary for combat? That's not it. The question is, should they? Because with anyone that's ever played a strategy game of any kind, you want to say Battleship, do you want to say Settlers of Catan, you want to say whatever it is, there's the question of, can I put this here, and should I put this here? Because the rules of the game are what determine what you can and cannot do. With, like, chess, pawns can only go forward unless they're taking, which goes diagonal. They cannot go backwards, right? You get it to the back row of the opponent's board, then you get to switch it out for a queen, although you can technically switch it out for whatever you want, but you get a queen. Knights go up and to the side, and then, like, that's what's determined what you can do. But it doesn't dictate for you in every circumstance, as you're playing against your opponent, what you should do. Maybe it's best to leave this piece where it is and move another. Maybe it's best to, or like, so I think that that's really the question that needs to be asked. It's not about equality. It's not about equity. It's not about that. It's, the question is this something we should do purposefully, achieving an end in mind? And I think that what's interesting that I've been kind of watching take its shape is that now that the discussion is in, with, I guess you could say, a product of feminism, is that they've made it to the point where if women can do anything a man can do, then why shouldn't they be made to do everything men have to do? Which includes, so if Men have to register for the selective service at 18. Why don't we? And I think that as a question is just flawed. It's not, well, we might as well. That's stupid. That's reckless and careless. The question is, why should we make women register for the draft? Why should we? Because of the fact that if World War II situation, if women are selected for the draft the same as men, then who's going to stay home as Rosie the Riveter and do it, or so forth? Who's going to work in those mines and in those mills and everywhere where they're pulling the lead out and forming the brass and building the ships? Like, who's going to do those things? Because there's, in every situation, you have to consider all sides of it. You can't just put everyone straightforward onto the one side of the board, leave yourself open to be flanked, for instance. Like, I mean, so I think that, I mean, Jeff Goldblum, right? They just asked if they could do something. They never paused to ask if they should. That's probably going to end up as my thumbnail here. But is it the best thing? It's not enough to mean well in a situation. We always need to think about what is the right thing to do here. My argument would say that no, we should not force women to register for the selective service. I don't think that's a good idea, because of the fact that, quite frankly, I don't think that really a draft is going to be a necessary thing. I don't think that whatever the next war comes, whatever that ends up being, it's not gonna hinge on infantry involvement. That's just something we've seen. There's a lot of armor. There's a lot of planes, a lot of airstrikes, a lot of artillery, like all those kind of things that are much more heavily involved with engagements currently. That's kind of where war is. I think it's an entirely different animal than when we're talking about guerrilla combat in the jungle, or if we're talking about trench warfare in Europe. We're talking about those kind of things. Like, just war is different. It's adapted to make better use, more valuable use of smaller units, smaller platoons, narrow fields of engagement, a lot of heavy equipment support. So I just don't think, I think that it probably is something that could be slated for obsolescence, but that's just my 2 cents on it. And I don't think that, like, my grandkids are probably not even going to have the United States of America anymore, but whatever. My grandkids it's probably not going to be necessary. It might be downgraded to optional when you turn 18. If you want to, you can. But on the alternative side, I think that it would probably be a good thing for most men, at the very least, maybe people in general, if they were to, at 18, to serve 3-year terms or 2-year terms in the military, or maybe in localized police or something like that. For the first of that, it would get them fit, because obesity and just self-care and health and stuff in the U.S. is terrible. And then the second thing is, you have discipline, regimented behavior, basic human skills of, getting up on time, showing up to things on time. You have no choice but to learn stuff like that. And then third, you'd have like basic first aid, all the stuff that you're supposed to learn in Boy Scouts when you're little, but because no one's involved in Boy Scouts anymore, Girl Scouts anymore, it would give them an opportunity to learn stuff like that. But I don't know. There's a lot to talk about. This video went longer than I was hoping, but if you have thoughts or opinions about it, love to hear it. Arguments for or against, let me hear it. And I don't know. We'll see what the next thing is that comes up.